Hey, Emblem Leif.
Yes!
Enough about your cousin. What about you? What was warfare like in your world? Uh-huh. Oh, that sounds interesting. Tell me more. The opening crawl you just saw was in English, even the Japanese version, and aside from the names, nothing was really changed in the translation. It was that good. Hello everyone, Big Clinky here, and welcome to Fire Emblem Thracia 776, the last Fire Emblem game created by Shozo Kaga, released on the Super NES in 1999, several years after the release of the Nintendo 64. This game has a reputation for being, well, weird and experimental, to put it very, very lightly. But it's a game that I've gained new appreciation of in recent years because it's equal parts that and the building blocks of all modern Fire Emblem. Many mechanics such as you see here, fog of war, torches, rescuing, weapon ranks as we know them, all debuted in this game. And a lot of its map design philosophy is very reminiscent of the Game Boy Advance games and even the modern entries. So, if you're concerned about giving this game a try, maybe don't be. It's more familiar than you might think. But it does have its fair share of weirdness, which I will be walking you through as we see it. An important thing to note is that I'll be playing this game with a fan translation patch because it was only released in Japan. This fan translation is the Little Manster version, considered the most complete fan translation of this game. What's interesting about Little Manster is that it also, well, it blurs the line between a fan translation and a fan remake, in the sense that it adds a lot of quality of life features that were not present in the original version. Now, some people might balk at this because it maybe detracts from the original experience, but all of these added QOL features can be turned off in the options, and none of them fundamentally change the gameplay of this game. They just make it easier to understand, and that's really the important point. Thracia has a reputation for being the hardest game in the series. Outside of a few outlier chapters, I don't believe this is true. but it is the most obtuse game in the series, having a lot of mechanics that are not explained or really hinted at outside of a VHS tape that came with the Japanese collector's edition. Now, if you're interested in that, you can find a translated version of that on Choops' channel. I'll put a link in the description. Skip to about 10 minutes and 30 seconds into that tape, though, because the rest of it's a recap of genealogy of the Holy War. By the way, this game is set in between generations 1 and 2 of genealogy, around the last year of that time skip. Now, there is some parts of this game that might be a little confusing if you haven't played genealogy. Essentially, genealogy Gen 1 encompasses the backstory of Thracia. But really what you need to know is that Sigurd got barbecued and the one who did it took over the world. And with that context, let us begin with the Warrior of Fiana. Barely escaping the burning of Castle Leonster with his life, the young Prince Leif was looked after by Finn, his knight and retainer. Together with Nanna, a young nobleman under Finn's care, and possibly his daughter, it's a little unclear, the trio fled pursuers sent by the conquerors of North Thracia, the Grandvale Empire, which lay to the west, and was responsible for the aforementioned barbecue of Sigurd. Yet Finn proved stronger than those who hunted them due to his amazing brave lance, and the three made their way to the cities of Ulster and Tara, posing as common vagrants. Eventually, they drifted into Fiana, a small village on Thracia's eastern coast. Fiana was an independent community with its own militia, the Fiana Freeblades, which is an amazing localization and way better than just the Fiana Militia, thank you Awakening, led by the swordswoman Eyvel. Eyvel welcomed Leif's group as if they were her own kin. Under her watchful eye, the deposed prince spent his childhood in Fiana, growing into maturity alongside youths of common birth. Now, in year 776 of the Grandvale calendar, see why we named the game this? War was beginning. Chapter 1, The Warrior of Fiana, which I think was named after a group of legendary warriors from Celtic mythology. So, this is Raedric, the guy in purple. He is going to be our villain for the majority of this game, and he's not in Heroes as of recording this, but I always pictured Raedric with a very deep Irish accent, kind of similar to Dagdar in Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse. The whole Leonster region, like a lot of the names of the places like Ulster and Codor are heavily based off of like Irish names. And well, we already know this guy's a bad guy because he advocates torture. And we know this guy's a bad guy because he's already done the torture. So yeah, the prince is literally not here, not because they're not giving up his location, but because he went to fight some pirates. So, there were early game bandits in this game, but they were fought off screen. So yes, the Freeblades are the local militia, and we get a little bit of backstory. This village was once home to a group of brigands. So yeah, there were also generic bandits in the past, but they were defeated a decade ago. Once you see Eyvel, you can believe that she could rout a group of bandits on her own. Yes, we'll be seeing that in a moment. She may be a problem, yeah, that's an understatement. Unfortunately, they have Eyvel's one weakness, capturing. So, yeah, there's a lot of debate as to whether Thracia canonizes pairing Finn with Lachesis in Fire Emblem 4, because that would make Nanna his blood daughter, but she could very easily be his adopted daughter. I personally don't think this game has anything to say about that. There is actually something else regarding Lachesis canon ships that is established in Thracia, but that comes way later. And there's one other canon ship from Fire Emblem 4 that's also established in Thracia. Weissman? Wait, they hired that guy from Ouroboros, really? Fortunately, he's not nearly that caliber. I mean, this guy has a face, for one thing. Your trust in me is well placed, for I am a generic boss, and I am definitely not going to get completely destroyed soon. And I have generic soldiers with me, and a generic archer. So this is somebody that we don't recognize from Fire Emblem 4. She's a totally new character to Thracia. But this is Nana. She was Lacus' daughter and playable in Fire Emblem 4, and she's in this game too. And yes, Nana does have Holy Blood that she inherited from Lacus', which gives her a freakishly high strength stat back in FE4, but not really here. I believe it's pronounced Hoda. A lot of the new names of the Crusaders are very Norse, so I'm not the best at pronouncing Old Norse. Yeah, Munster used to be called Manster in earlier fan translations, and that's where this patch's name comes from. Hey, you can't capture a bunch of units in one turn, that's against the rules! And Raedric is nowhere near cool enough to be screwing the rules, so he won't get that treatment. So yeah, we've got a bunch of soldiers and archers all over the village, but we're fighting actual Imperial soldiers in the first chapter, no bandits. In fact, regarding the banditry, we are the bandits this time. You'll see. It's finally come full circle. We were the bandits all along. I do love how he just goes up to sneak around that corner and just look around it. It's just, you can get a lot of personality out of map sprites if you use them right. And so we immediately had the dynamic among these two axe fighters. I like to call them axe bros. They're not actually brothers, but they kind of might as well be. One of them is the hot-blooded one, and the other is the calm one. And that's, yeah, like I said earlier, Thracia established a lot of conventions for later in the series, because that's the same dynamic that Dorcas and Bartray have in Alib. So, Little Leif is actually an invention by the fan translation. She just calls him Leaf Summer in Japanese, but they felt like they wanted to use a little bit more of a familial term there, because Eyvel was basically his surrogate mother growing up. So they felt her calling him Lord Leif sounded a bit too formal. There is a whole list of, like, patch notes for the fan translation that I highly recommend reading if you don't care about spoilers. It's very interesting. Yeah, and Leif saying that he won't run anymore, that's actually a line of his in Heroes. In fact, we'll actually be seeing quite a few of Leif's Heroes lines in just this one chapter. The passing of 15 summers, a very flowery way to say that he's 15 years old. I forgot that he was also 15. I always used to think that Roy was the only lord who was 15, but no, Leif is too. And a lot of people actually consider Leif one of the best written lords in the series. That's actually a big part of why I wanted to record this game. So Eyvel's about to give a very interesting hint here. Most foot soldiers are just regular folk forced into the Imperial army against their will. If they surrender, just take their weapons and let them go. But we can still bloody them until they surrender. So this is one of the core mechanics of Fire Emblem Thracia, the capturing system. And when Eyvel says don't overdo it, she means make sure you select the right option in the attack menu. Just kind of right here, Osian is not the greatest at capturing. I am going to be doing a tiny bit more chatter though, because to explain Thracia's mechanics and stats, I'm going to talk about Leif.
I'll take it back! All of it!
Leif is one of the most useful characters in the game, but for more subtle reasons than some lords. He's not a combat juggernaut, but more of a support unit. Literally, as he supports an enormous amount of the cast. Supports in Thracia give a bonus to accuracy, avoid, critical, and critical avoid of usually 10% to characters within a 3-tile radius. They're entirely fixed in Thracia. Characters will never gain new support partners or increase their bonds with existing ones. They can also be one way. For example, while Leif provides a 10% bonus to all those listed characters, he only gets a 10% bonus in return from Nana. Leif and Nana is one of the only neutral supports in the game, and is quite a good one. Leif can provide an additional accuracy and avoid bonus to the army via his leadership or authority stars. I prefer the term leadership, but Radiant Dawn officially localizes it as authority, so I had to call it that. Every authority star across all units deployed provides a 3% accuracy and evasion boost to your entire army. But Leif is unique in that the number of stars he has depends on the plots. Every advisor he has present adds a star. Right now he has 0, but that will change, and when it does, it's yet more utility for him. But authority isn't the only type of star a Thracia character can have on their profile, as Leif has one Vigor star. Each star gives a character a 5% chance to act again after ending their turn. Yes, this is a mechanic in Thracia, and it's hilarious. And in the same category of weird Thracia mechanics is Leif's FCM, or follow-up critical multiplier, of 2. So, crits are a little weird in Thracia. Your first attack in any given combat is capped at a critical rate of 25%. But if you have enough speed to attack again, that's 4 more than the enemy, your second attack's critical rate is multiplied by your character's unique FCM value. TLDR, Leif gets a double critical rate on his follow-up attacks, which makes his combat a lot better than it looks on paper. What also does this is his personal weapon, the Light Brand. Thracia loves these, so much that I've included them in the unit bios because they form a good part of many units' identities. For Leif, the Light Brand is a fairly strong sword that has 1 to 2 range, but when used at 2 range it deals magic damage. While Leif starts with a magic stat of 0, this is still great as it bypasses the defense of enemies, but especially terrain. Thracia has terrain giving defense bonuses of up to +10, so ignoring that's a very big deal, especially when most bosses sit on these tiles. It also gives +10 luck and can be used to recover all HP, giving Leif some deceptive durability if you're willing to give up his action. This does consume a use of the weapon, but it has a very generous 60, and you get access to a repair staff early. The Light Brand isn't a bad choice for it. Leif also has the Adept skill, giving him an attack speed % chance of attacking again, like a Brave weapon. This is unreliable early, especially since the Light Brand will drop his attack speed to 0, more on that later, but it's another thing giving Leif better combat than his stats suggest. Oh right, I haven't even covered his stats yet. This is actually quite fitting of Thracia. Most units are defined by their special innate abilities, skills, or personal weapons, than their stats alone. But let's cover them. HP affects your ability to not die, strength is your physical damage, skill affects accuracy and critical rate, speed affects evasion and your ability to double attack, luck affects accuracy and evasion to a much greater extent than it does in most Fire Emblems, and critical evasion to a much lesser extent than normal, and movement is how many squares you can go in a turn. Now you might notice that I haven't mentioned 2 stats. Well, firstly, where's resistance? Thracia operates on Pokemon Gen 1 special stat logic. Magic affects both your magic damage and your magic defense. While Constitution, or Build, was a stat introduced in Thracia and is an incredibly important one. Firstly, you lose 1 point of speed for every point of weight your weapon exceeds your build stat by. Perhaps more importantly though, if your con is higher than a unit, you can rescue them if they're an ally, or capture them if they're an enemy. Mounted units count as having 20 con for this purpose, which by the way, is the cap on all stats in Thracia. Regardless of if you're ally or enemy, promoted or unpromoted, all stats only go up to 20. Here Leif's starting con is a bit of a weakness, as it's not enough to do good capturing off the bat. But his 15% growth in it is actually about average, And speaking of which, I've put growths off to the side in these bios because they're not that important, both due to Thracia's lower caps and because there are a lot of items that modify them. But among these, Leif's strength growth of 35% is above average, and that really says something about this game. And especially above average is his 3% growth in Yes, you might have been wondering about that. Characters can level up movement in Thracia. Yes, it's hilarious, and you will know when it happens. And given Leif is force deployed in every map and does a lot of fighting in the first arc for reasons, it's actually pretty likely for him to level movement at least once. The force deployment means Leif is also the one character immune to Thracia's fatigue mechanic, which is another major asset he has, but fatigue doesn't come into play until chapter 8, so I'll explain more later. Overall, Leif perfectly sums up Thracia unit philosophy. He might not look obviously strong, but he has a lot of special assets that make him one of the most useful characters. That also perfectly sums up his emblem in Engage. It's almost like its makers really knew their Fire Emblem. So we've got this monster soldier here, who only has 2 speed. Keep an eye on the enemy con stats, as they are very important. Also keep an eye on their items. This guy here has a javelin and a vulnerary. So what I want to do with this guy is, I want to move up to close to his range, but not actually in his range. I want to let him come to us. And then well, you'll see. So I'm going to move everyone up like this. Meanwhile, though, Osian is going to head this way, because he needs to visit this house specifically. So, come to me, little soldiers. Okay, only one of them came to me. But now that one of the soldiers is here, if we move one of our characters adjacent, we have the option to either... I should also mention that in the fan translation, this is actually a QOL feature. The original Japanese version has the wait command at the top of the list by default, and because that was such a havoc on most people's muscle memory, the fan translation changed that. But yeah, we have 2 options. Attack, which will have us fight combat normally. Now, the thing here is that, like a lot of old Fire Emblem games, they don't actually calculate your damage straight up. You have to do the maths yourself. So I have 21 attack versus the enemy's 3 defense. So I'm going to be doing, I believe that should be 18 damage per attack. And I have more than 4 attack speed than them, so I'll be doubling. And I have the Brave Lance, so I'll be hitting 4 times. That guy will be very, very dead. However, I can also choose to capture. This way, I only have 17 attack and 5 attack speed, so I won't be naturally doubling. I have to rely on the extra attack from the Brave Lance. So, I also have less defense, 3 here versus 7 when attacking normally. So going for a capture is risky. What are the benefits? Well, you'll see. Hopefully I actually do capture this guy.
I'll never back down!
Okay, I was about to yell at Finn there, but he crit his second attack, so it's fine. Because if we defeat an enemy by this method, we absorb them into our body. So Finn is now effectively rescuing the enemy monster soldier. And because of this, all of his stats are halved except for HP, luck, and con. And this is actually what happens while you're in the capture attempt too. Those main combat stats get halved. So, what's the point of this? Well, if I move another character adjacent to him, I can trade not just with Finn, but with the captured soldier, and I can take his stuff. Now that I've done that, I can take him, and then I can release him. So, that guy is effectively removed from the combat, but he's not dead. He's just been released to elsewhere.
One day, we will take back our realm, as long as Lord Leif lives.
Finn is our first, and for a while, only mounted units. I alluded to this when talking about Leif, but mounted units are very important in Thracia because they count as having maxed out con when capturing and rescuing. This also means that they themselves cannot be captured unless forced to dismount somehow. Oh yeah, dismounting is a thing in Thracia, and it also forms a key part of the mounted unit identity. Mounted units must dismount manually in order to enter indoor terrain, and they'll start this way in entirely indoor maps. When dismounted, the unit loses some stats. I've shown the stats bestowed by the mount in lighter bars. And for some classes, they're forced to swap weapons. This is a big detriment in Finn's case, as he cannot use lances while dismounted, switching to swords, which he starts with a D rank in. And this is particularly bad for Finn, because the best thing about him is his exclusive weapon, the Brave Lance. There are brave weapons of other types, but the Brave Lance is his alone, and it helps amazingly when capturing, guaranteeing you at least 2 attacks, while also having solid stats, and plus 10 luck. Speaking of luck, this also fuels Finn's Miracle skill, which is quite strong in Thracia. It has a luck times 3% chance of triggering, which means at capped luck you've got a 60% chance. Which is pretty good given that, unlike other Fire Emblem games, this doesn't just protect you from one hit. If this triggers, you cannot die for the rest of the combat. All incoming attacks will be rigged to miss if they would otherwise kill you. I'm not actually sure if the Brave Lance's plus 10 affects this skill, but if it does, that gives Finn a maximum 90% miracle chance, which is pretty insane. Getting a support bonus from Leif and Nana, 2 of the best utility characters in the game, is also nothing to sneeze at. Especially since it stacks with one of Nana's skills. Finn may not have a follow critical modifier or vigor stars, but he does have one authority star. This means that even in indoor maps where he's not that useful, he can be worth deploying if you have a free slot for the authority star alone. Finn's growths are fairly average all round, apart from a solid luck growth, and his base stats are great for the early game, letting him one round most things when not capturing, and one round a decent number of things with his Brave Lance when capturing. And with his combat being so good early on, it's easy to forget that Finn is not a pre-promote. Lance Knight is a first tier class that can promote to Duke Knight with a Master Seal at level 10. This can give Finn a boost if you want to use him long term, but in my experience, once his Brave Lance starts to run low on uses, Finn's generally past his prime. He is, however, absolutely excellent for the early game, and a key part of getting a lot of captures, so I'd highly recommend using him a lot at that point. But even later, don't forget his Authority Star. There's a lot of nuances to the catch and release system that I will be going into a bit later when they become relevant. For now, though, I do want to make sure that Eyvel does not have the Flame Sword equipped, just the Iron Blade, because these guys are going to go for her at range, and you can't capture on the enemy phase. You will always be fighting to kill them. And I want to capture this guy because he has a vulnerary. Now, speaking of capturing, I really would like to capture this guy with Osian. There is a slight problem, though, as you can see. Oh, I do double him. Again, though, slight problem is that I only do 8 damage. That's not going to be enough to finish him off, and then he'll counterattack me on the enemy phase, and again, because you always fight to kill on the enemy phase, he'll probably die. In fact, he'll almost definitely die, because of a reason that you will see when I just put Osian here and let the enemy attack me. You'll see. So here we go.
Messed with the wrong guy.
So, I just critical there despite only having a 6% critical chance. Also, displaying the critical chance on the battle screen is actually also a QOL feature of Little Manster. In the Japanese version, that was just level, which is not very important to see on the combat screen, so I'm kind of glad they changed that. Again, you can turn off a lot of these in the options menu. Eyvel just got hit there. This game does use one random number for like attack rolls, so a 25% is just a 25%. There's no extra shenanigans going on there. Though I should also mention, we've got 2 new people joining us, but while they talk, I can mention this. In Thracia, hit rates have a maximum of 99% and a minimum of 1%. There is no such thing as a dead certainty in this game. Any attack can potentially miss or hit. Also, it definitely doesn't matter how good Eyvel is, because she is pretty freaking amazing. And it's this guy. A lot of people are probably cheering. So yeah, we've got 3 new characters to play with here. The main one of use is Dagdar. Tanya's an archer, and the problem with archers is that you can't capture at 2 range, as you can see here. So this actually makes Tanya pretty weak. Her main use is chipping down enemies that you want to capture. We also have Marty, and yes, you are reading those stats right, 0 base skill and speed. But Marty's useful for other reasons you may be seeing in a moment. So okay, Dagdar. Dagdar is the king of capturing. All hail the almighty king of capturing! I'm now picturing Dagdar as a professional wrestler with that title, and it makes way too much sense. Anyway, Dagdar is essentially the second Jagan you get, and as you can tell, they're both pretty unconventional. Dagdar is a warrior, able to use axes and bows. He's also very tanky at base, having high HP and among the best defense of your starting army, along with not bad speed and enough con that he's only weighed down by 3 axes, one of them being the hammer he starts with. But the con is the real asset. Dagdar is able to capture nearly everything in the early game, even though he's not mounted. And this gets you a lot of weapons and or money. And he's doubly great at capturing thanks to the accost skill. If Dagdar has more HP and attack speed than the enemy, you'll fight a second round of combat, letting him potentially attack 4 times if he had a speed lead of 4, or 8 times with a brave weapon and a speed lead of 4. However, the enemy will get extra attacks on him, and this skill is a bit of a double-edged sword because it still triggers even if Dagdar can't counterattack. Watch out for 2-range enemies when he's using a melee axe, and especially long-range tomes and ballistas, though many like using this to waste enemy ballista ammo. But this double-edged sword can work in your favour if you have Dagdar use a bow against an enemy with only 1 range. Just remember you can't capture this way. Dagdar's growths are terrible, but there exist items that can fix this, and many players say Dagdar is endgame viable on his base stats alone. His capturing skills make him a walking weapons factory that'll be invaluable through the entire game. Actually, he's not going to be able to capture this guy in 1 round, so I'm going to go ahead and use Finn for this, with my Brave Lance. Okay, 26 HP... I'll be doing, oh, I actually do W, so yeah, Finn's gonna be totally fine in this capture, I think. Yeah, my maths may be off a few times in this playthrough, we'll see. Okay, yeah, he's definitely fine. So yeah, Finn captures another one. Mounted units are excellent for capturing. So I've got that guy now, and okay, Dagdar can move adjacent. So Eyvel's main issue is she's not the best at capturing. Yeah, she can't even capture this archer because of the con is too high. However, Halvan can at least try. I'm not going to double, though, and that's not great. Well, I mean, let's try and have Dagdar show off his capturing chops here. 13, my hit rate is not great, but I will be doing 11 times 2. If I hit both these attacks, I will be doing it. And wait, both these attacks? Dagdar's only going to attack once because his attack speed's not high enough, right? Well... Okay, he missed the second hit, but you get the idea. Why did Dagdar attack twice? Dagdar has the accost skill. If the user's attack speed and HP are higher than the enemy's, it adds 1 round of combat. This is, as you'd imagine, also excellent for capturing. Okay then, speaking of capturing, let's go ahead and have Halvan hopefully grab this guy. He has just enough damage to do it if he hits the 85. Don't wanna, probably shouldn't have said that, but, oh no, he crit, nice, okay. He had 13 crit due to a support bonus from Eyvel, I think. Support bonuses in Thracia, I already went over them in Leif's bio, but yeah. So now Halvan's got somebody captured, as does Finn. No other enemies are in range of them, so I don't really need to focus on getting rid of the captives. I haven't actually explained yet why Osian crit in the previous combat, and that's because he has Wrath. Wrath in Thracia is special. If the enemy attacks first, you always critical. It's pretty amazing. That is one of the reasons Osian is an incredible combat unit. The other reason is this. You want to make sure that him and him alone visits this house. Thankfully though, unlike a lot of things in Thracia, which as I've said are very obtuse, the game will clearly hint that you need to visit it with Osian if you go with someone else, and you won't lose your chance to do so. His dad will just say, "Where's my boy Osian? He's so rebellious, I don't like him. Please bring him here so I can talk some sense into him." So yeah, that's the whole dynamic between Osian and his dad. But the reason why you wanna go here is that we need to get his ancestral family axe. Yeah, never leave this at home! Seriously, if you hadn't left it at home, you might be a pre-promote by now. And so we get the legendary Vouge, otherwise known as the Poogie or the Bouge. So yeah, this is basically a killer hand axe with 60 uses and 80 hits, and it's exclusive to Osian. This plus Wrath makes him absolutely incredible.
Eyvel says I rile too easy. I'm not gonna prove her right by yelling at her about it though.
I finally get to talk about the ultimate axe, bro! I still liked it better when he was called Orson in Awakening, but oh well. Osian is, off the bat, pretty decent. He's got solid speed, okay strength, enough con not to be weighed down by several axes, though a little lower than you'd want for capturing. Okay growths in strength and speed that can easily be fixed by items we get later, a 3 times follow-up critical modifier, which he doesn't even need on the enemy phase since Wrath ensures that he always crits on counterattacks. He gets a support bonus from Eyvel and has a rare mutual support in Tanya, which is not great due to things I'll be saying later. But all of that pales in comparison to his personal weapon. It is known by many names: Poogie, Bougie, Vouge, but all of them are destruction. This is a 60-use, high-accuracy, 1 to 2 range axe with a 30 critical rates, and given his follow critical modifier, he will generally always crit with this at least once per combat. He may not be mounted, he may not be great at capturing, but Osian is an absolute powerhouse entirely due to this weapon. And you can either repair it with the repair staff you get early, or obtain another one towards the end of the game. So he can keep it up for a long time. He can promote to hero at level 10, which gives him access to swords, but why would he want to use them? And a solid +3 to speed and defense. I'm struggling to think about what else to say about this guy. He's just really good, thanks to one really good axe. Be absolutely sure you get it in the first chapter by having him visit his dad's house. And what sucks is that he's now ridiculously far from the action, and probably won't be fighting for the rest of the chapter. Yeah, I wish that was not the case, but it is. So, okay, I'm gonna be heading over here. We have a couple of enemies here, but this might be the time to show off another feature of the fan translation. I believe if we switch hidden data to 2... yeah, this will show what's called guard AI. These enemies don't actually move, and the boss doesn't move either. Again, an optional QOL feature that you can turn off if you want to. Speaking of optional QOL, another thing that having map data on 2 does is show you talk conversations with an exclamation mark. So Eyvel can talk to Dagdar. Unlike one of Kaga's other crazy games, Tearing Saga, usually you don't get much out of these conversations. Sometimes you can get items though, so I would recommend it, but this never increases supports or anything. And yeah, we didn't tell this guy he was the heir of House Leonster for a long time, and by hiding him from the Empire, we put everyone in this village in danger. It's not actually explained here, but Dagdar was the leader of the bandits that Eyvel routed in the past. He decided to turn over a new leaf and join her Freeblades. So yeah, we're the bandits this time. Okay, a couple of these guys are going to head out towards us. And speaking of bandits, Marty is the very definition of a meme unit. Yes, you are reading those base stats right. 0 in skill and speed. And his growths in those stats are terrible too. In fact, all of his offensive growths suck, but he has overkill growths in HP, luck, defense, and con. And that's Marty's whole gimmick. He's awful at fighting, but he's a giant slab of beef that can pick up anything he wants to. This, oddly, makes Marty not a bad unit to have around, because he can pull the captured enemies off of other characters so they don't need to suffer the stat penalty on the enemy phase. And while he does that, he can then strip the enemy of its inventory. That's Marty's lot in life, to be a sapient pack mule. That said, this game does have items that raise growth rates and stat boosters, so it's possible to make any character good, and unsurprisingly, Marty is one of the most popular recipients of this, just because it's really funny. He does get a pretty insane +5 to skill and +6 to speed if he promotes though, and I recommend doing that as soon as possible because that's a big boost. He also gains access to bows. He promotes to warrior, the same class as Dagdar, and he's actually the only other warrior you have. Oh, by the way, yeah, Marty was the first ever playable brigand in the series. Sorry, Gonzalez. But, yeah, absolute meme combat-wise, still a surprisingly useful utility unit. Don't forget about him. So this is Marty's main use. Marty has great cons, so he can grab the captured enemies off of other people, and then he can go ahead and take this guy's short bow, and then yeet him onto the wall. And yeah, so Osian can speak to Tanya as well, and we might get that, we'll definitely get that conversation later, because I like to show all the conversations. But okay, how am I gonna do this? You have 25, okay, 23 HP is probably enough here, so let's see if I can try a capture with Dagdar. The hand axe is quite weak, and I'm only doing 11, I'm just barely not doing enough damage to one-round you. I didn't want to have to do this, but I may need to. Perhaps first things first, I can actually move Leif over here and have him try to weaken this guy a little bit with his light brand. The light brand does drop Leif's speed significantly. Also, you may notice we have no healer in our starting party. That's why you want to capture the enemies and steal their vulneraries. Vulneraries actually heal all HP in Thracia. You don't even need elixirs in this game. So okay, with you down to 12, I still don't think that's enough for Halvin to capture you. No, because you have 3 extra defense. Oh, and it's got a vulnerary, so I really want to make sure that I get the capture. So in that case, I think I actually will just give Dagdar the Iron Axe right now, because I would very much like this on my side when I do this capture, because yeah, that's a little better odds. Because I really want this vulnerary. Yeah, I would have got 2 shots at that because of the cost skill. And yeah, you get a slightly different experience bar for going for a capture, so I've got you short lance, and another short lance. Okay, I am terribly sorry, generic soldier, but I think I have enough short lances. You're gonna go ahead and die. Eyvel is your blunt object. You throw at an enemy that you really want to die. And speaking of dying, so you might think Eyvel's pretty invincible here. She one-rounds basically everything and has a very low chance of actually dying. Well, she's more than that. She's literally invincible.
I fear no enemy.
It's not often you see a Swordmaster Jagan, and I think it's a pretty cool concept. Eyvel has nearly capped skill and actually capped speed at base, a maxed sword rank, and the adept skill, meaning she's likely to tear apart anything she gets into combat with. She also has slightly higher starting movement than the average promoted foot units, being equal to unpromoted mounted units, so she has no trouble keeping up with your army. Plus a 10% chance of moving twice due to her Vigor Stars. She also starts with the Flame Sword. Think of this like the Light Brand, except people besides Leif can use it, but it gives its wielder plus 10 magic, making it consistently strong even in the hands of a non-mage. This is one of your answers to armored units in the early game. The only problem is you might want to save this for a bit later, as troubadours can make very good use of it to buff up their staff casting. Eyvel isn't just an excellent fighter though, she's also a great support unit, having 1 authority star and giving a 10% support bonus to many of the early game units like Osian, Halvan, and Dagdar, along with receiving support bonuses from Leif. And there's also the elephant in the room. Eyvel is literally unkillable. This is something the game doesn't tell you unless you turn on hidden data in the fan patches, but she has a hidden skill that makes any attack that would otherwise kill her always miss. It's effectively miracle active constantly. But note my specific wording. I said Eyvel is literally unkillable, and this is true. But she can still be captured. The odds of this happening are very, very low, but if it does, you won't lose her permanently unless you let the enemy walk off the map while carrying her. Still, it's something to keep in mind. Besides this highly specific thing, Eyvel does have some other weaknesses. Her growths are terrible, but she doesn't need them. Her real weakness is she's not great at capturing due to her middling con. It's enough to capture some lighter enemies like archers, but any bandits or even most soldiers are above her. Eyvel is something you throw at a problem you want dead, not captured. And solving too many problems this way in the early game will set you back. This mentality with Jagans is typically a beginner's trap, but it is true of Eyvel, so keep it in mind. Yeah, I like getting extra javelins with Finn. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and equip this javelin so that I don't waste the Brave Lance against you and so that I don't potentially kill you on the enemy phase. And then I am going to yeet that enemy away. And I guess I can start the trade here in earnest by taking your short bow and vulnerary, but I can't actually take the enemy off because Tanya's a little bit of a wimp. Oh, I accidentally pressed the L button there. Another quality of life feature the fan translation added is basically a show all enemy ranges button. That was definitely not in the original. And yeah, I wouldn't have killed even if I hit that second attack, which is good because it means more captures for me. Though I do want to be focusing on the ones that have javelins and especially vulneraries. Speaking of capturing, Eyvel is unkillable, but she can still be captured. So you'll want to bear that in mind. Okay, now you can take and yeet that guy. And I generally like to have Finn out in the front lines doing the capturing, so I'm gonna go ahead and this time capture Brave Lance. That guy's got 0 attack speed, so I'm doubling him even without the Brave Lance. But yeah, I don't believe the follow-up critical modifier comes into play on Brave weapon attacks. Also, mounted units in this game do have Canto, or Canter as it was called in Engage, and I vastly prefer that name. So they'll be able to spend any remaining movement they have after doing most actions. Let's go ahead and throw you into Finn, which somehow still counts as releasing you. And, oh, I don't even have a weapon, that's why I can't capture you. Right, I mean, I could actually try and have Marty capture that guy if I really wanted to. Even though these short lances are pathetic, you might still want to hold on to a few of them. But I think for now I am actually just going to have, I do 6 times 2, it's not going to be enough to finish you. Leif finish you for a little bit of experience. Having Leif get experience is always nice. But yeah, you might want to grab some of these weak enemy weapons because of something that you'll be seeing once I reach this building. That's actually a vendor, not a house. It looks slightly different, so that's how you can tell. Okay, light brand or regular iron sword. No, that's not going to work. I actually need to use the light brand, which in melee is still a physical weapon, but it does, it's still pretty powerful. And Leif taking a bit of damage is also not that bad, because he can use the light brand to heal, as I've already said in his bio. But now let's make sure to visit these villages. Y'all made it back, what a relief. I'm not going to do that old lady voice. So yeah, here is a vulnerary. Well, I got a few from the enemies, but it's always nice to have more. Especially since, again, we don't actually have any healers, and we won't have any healers for a while, and potentially not at all. The first healer you recruit is actually optional. So yeah, a lot of the villagers tell you that you should be capturing enemies and taking their stuff. And yeah, it's risky because your defense gets halved, so be very careful. If the enemy hits you during a capture attempt, that's another reason why brave weapons are good, because you get to attack twice before the enemy can counter. And this right here is actually a little hint that if an enemy is asleep, you can actually capture them without a fight. This is also the case if the enemy is unarmed and cannot counterattack you. And that applies to your characters too. So in fact, Halvan right now is kind of in a bit of a bad situation, because if an enemy so much as touches him, they actually will capture him. Kind of accidentally showed that off there. Also, Eyvel just triggered a Vigor Star or a Movement Star, so that lets her fully act again in the same turn. However, okay, you have 8 con. I think you have to be higher to capture. Yes, you do, so sadly. Do I really need that short bow is the thing? Maybe I don't. But I'd probably rather get that guy off of the vendor, as long as he doesn't have any vulneraries. Nah, just a short lance. So I'm very sorry, but you get to die. So the flame sword that Eyvel comes with is also extremely powerful. It's basically the main way you're meant to take down the boss in this chapter. It will pretty much one-round everything because it hits them on their magic stat, and also it gives you plus 10 magic. Oh hey, the Victory is Near theme started playing. It's always fun when that happens. Okay, let's see what the archer and the soldier up there do. Okay, one's going for Finn, the other didn't even want to attack. Like many old Fire Emblem games, you get about 10 experience points even if you don't damage the enemy. So sometimes repeatedly dodging a weak enemy is a valid grinding strategy. Okay, so you guys are in, and we're still in the Victory is Near music. This house up there is very important. I may or may not have missed it in an earlier attempt at this chapter, like an idiot. But yeah, Osian is, he's coming. Let's see, you have 7 con. Aha, Eyvel can capture you. Let's see. I don't actually have enough to double, so, once again, Tanya's actually doing more than she usually does in my playthroughs here.
Hey! Watch it! Pick on me and I'll make you regret it!
Thracia made some surprising strides in balancing, especially compared to the Fire Emblem games that came after it. Unfortunately, archers are still bad. In addition to all the usual problems of being bad on the enemy phase, they have the additional issue in Thracia of being completely unable to capture anything, as you can only capture in melee. And as the early game is very focused on capturing, as it's your only way to get weapons and money, Tanya doesn't really have much of a niche, except maybe to chip away at enemies so you can capture them more easily. She does have a good base speed and a very good speed growth, along with good luck, but she also has 3 base strength, 4 base con, meaning she's weighed down by every bow in the game by a minimum of 2 points, and a 2 times follow critical multiplier, and supports with Dagdar and Osian that don't really help because she's either so pathetic her crits don't even kill things, or they do kill things and you don't want them to because then you can't capture. And starting at E rank bows doesn't do her any favors either. The main notable thing is having one of the only mutual supports in the game, and it is admittedly with a very good character, but each of the starting Fiana Freeblades has at least one notable early game niche, and Tanya doesn't. And she might have had one if you fought enemy flyers in the early chapters, but you don't, and you won't for quite some time. One strange strength she has is that in Chapter 8X, none of the enemies can kill her for the first 15 turns. If you really like Tanya and want to use her, I recommend exploiting this for training. But yeah, really the main thing she can do is weaken enemies that you want to capture. And even then, she's not doing a great job of it, because 1 RN, 79% is still 79 rather than much higher. The Flame Sword will be physical in melee and won't be able to capture at range, so I basically have to bank on Adept working here. If this fails, I'm gonna have Leif just kill the guy. Okay, did not get adept. So, I am so sorry, but you're gonna have to die. Also, another QOL feature added by Little Manster is that if you hold down the L button when attacking, it turns off animations. So that can be nice if you want to speed things up a little bit. You don't have to turn animations off entirely for that. Though I personally like to keep them on for the level up screens, because otherwise you, otherwise, the level up screens look nicer when, you know, you actually see them in combat. You know what? I don't actually mind Marty being unarmed, sadly. Because even if you're unarmed, you still have to have higher con than the target to capture. So, Marty is pretty much impossible for most enemies to capture with his 15 con. And yoink! Do I move back, or... I'm just going to move back 1, because I'm going to have Halvin go ahead and take you... trade. I should also mention that in Thracia, you can actually trade as much as you want in one turn. So, like, if you're surrounded by 4 characters and are rescuing and are capturing an enemy, you can actually trade, like, with all 5 of those units in the same turn. It's pretty neat. Not sure I really need this short bow, but I might as well go for it. Okay, yeah, you actually hit the second accost attack that time. Hey, Dagdar also has movement stars. They're called Vigor stars in the fan translation, but I kind of like to call them movement stars. I do like looting these archers because Dagdar can actually use their bows. And that should be everything, yeah. The auto cursor was putting it to end. I'm sorry, but you have a death wish, so, I mean, you know... a really big death wish. I would have taken you alive if you hadn't done that, just saying. But okay, I'm gonna have Leif visit this house because I want him to use the item that it gives me. Also, this lets him find out that they took Marita and Nana. So yeah, now he knows that, so the thing that Leif was trying to do by charging into the village already kind of failed at that. So we get an enchanted ring with some spell or another. No, it's not an emblem ring. It is actually a stat-boosting item. All the stat-boosting items in Thracia are rings. The life ring is a set... Oh, nice! That was actually a perfectly timed thing, because now I can actually use it in the same turn, and get Leif closer to the siege point. Yeah, plus 7 HP. It's effectively an angelic robe. So what I was saying earlier about, like, the vendor... So for one, this vendor only sells vulneraries, but for 2, we have no money. And we never actually straight up get money in Thracia. The only source of money is selling weapons you loot from enemies. A lot of people really like this because it gives you the feeling of just a ragtag rebellion that's, you know, having to scavenge weapons from defeated foes to survive. But yeah, several enemy weapons are worth a lot of money, so it's worth capturing, even if you don't plan on actually using the stuff you grab off of the enemies. And I highly recommend capturing as much as possible in the early stages of the game. Which is why Finn is so amazing. Brave Lance. 5 defense. That's 12 times 2. That should still be enough. And also, it's actually pretty important that Halvin is over here, because just as Osian had to visit that lower down house, Halvin has to visit this house. And I will keep Finn there because... Nope, I can't quite visit. Oh well. Let's just yoink you, trade, give me your short lance, and release. We've got a lot of lances and only one actual lance user, but it's fine. Again, they're extra money. So now we're down to just the boss, and this guy right here, he has 11 defense, not a lot of attack power, and he can only attack at 1 range. 2 magic, so the way that you're probably meant to deal with him is to use Eyvel's Flame Sword or Leif's Light Brand. However, that will straight up kill him. What if you don't want to do that? What if you want to, you know, maybe garner some goodwill with the people by, showing that we show mercy to our enemies? You can capture bosses in this game. Now, I will say, despite that speech that I just gave, it doesn't affect the story in the vast majority of cases. However, it is a nice thing to do, and bosses will give slightly different dialogue if they're defeated by capturing. So if I put Leif and Eyvel here for the support bonus... Also, I just want to show this. He has 11 defense, but he actually has 21 defense, because gates in this game give 10 defense. But, okay, so if I use the hammer here, yeah, my hit rate is horrendous. But if I hit him with this hammer, I am going to be doing a heck of a lot of damage to him, though I probably need to soften him up a little first with probably Leif. Leif's not that likely to critical if he's out of support range, and I'll talk more about that in a moment, because for now, Halvin has to visit this village. Rather than the father, you get Halvin's sister here. And with this, we also get a special axe. You can pass the lake up on the mountain when this strange old crone just floated out of the water. Gave it to me. I thought the Brave Axe Spring was in Verdun, not in Thracia. This is a callback to Fire Emblem 4, which itself was a reference to a legend about the honest axe. This is a brave... If you played the Game Boy Advance games, you might recognize the Brave Axe icon as being the hand axe icon from those games. Meanwhile, the hand axe icon from these games is, I believe, the Iron Axe icon in the Game Boy Advance games. So that's pretty confusing. But yeah, the Brave Axe is amazing for capturing, as all brave weapons are, but the sad thing about it is... Halvin, the very definition of overshadowed by awesome. If Osian didn't exist, this guy would be pretty great. He's got some good bases, and 1 point more con than Osian at base is actually pretty decent because it lets him capture a few key early enemies. He also has a 40% strength growth, which is pretty high for Thracia standards, and a 4 times follow-up critical modifier. The problem is he lacks 2 of the things that Osian has. Firstly, Vantage I don't find as good as Wrath on its own. It really needs specific weapon types or other skills to combo with, and Halvin doesn't have any of them. But more importantly, he doesn't have the Vouge. Now, Halvin is required to get the Brave Axe, but anybody can use it once you have it, even Osian. If the Brave Axe was exclusive to Halvin, he might have actually been a very solid unit and usable alongside the fellow Axe Bro. But it's not. Halvin is by no means bad. You'll probably rely on him for a lot of fighting in the early game, even if you don't plan on taking him all the way, and he's not a terrible training project either. It really is just him versus the guy you're told not to be afraid of. Now, I don't want to go in with the capture attempt with Dagdar just yet, because if I did, then he would counter me on the enemy phase, and I would be out of capture mode, and he would die. So, let's see here. Lightbrand, I have 0 attack speed, so I'm not going to be doubling, and I won't be activating Adept either, because its rate is based on attack speed, so I'll be doing 10 damage here. Anyway, here we go. Well, hopefully you're not going to die. Also, the 2 women are already gone, so yeah. Like I said, though, sparing bosses doesn't actually affect the story, but it's kind of a nice thing to do sometimes. Speaking of nice things to do that don't really affect the story, this is the closest thing to like a C support that you'll get in this game. Osian can talk to Tanya, and it establishes their relationship and dynamic here. Sadly, Osian is kind of correct in that regard. Yeah, they are the same age, according to some designers' notes. I think they're both meant to be 18, though, so I don't know why they're calling each other kids. But yes, their dynamic is they are tsundere for each other. That's pretty much it. So, I either go for another chip with Leif and attempt to capture with the Brave Axe, maybe, with Dagdar, or I go for the hammer, like, after this. Okay, let's just see. Well, that's gonna happen eventually. 70 is a bit of a shaky hit rate. I suppose while I'm here, I can unload one of my excess items to Marty. Take some excess items from Halvin, as well as the Brave Axe. And then unload some more extra items to Marty. Yeah, this is why people often call it Thracia trading, even though this style of trading actually debuted in History of the Emblem. missed again, but that's a level up for Leif. Okay, not bad. Every time I get a level up in this game, I wait with bated breath because, yeah, if you get a move level up, that's when you'll see it. And so right here, I actually can't damage this guy unless I get a crit, and that's actually a good time to explain how crits work in Thracia. So I'll be going for this combat anyway, but I'll have to canter Finn out of the way afterwards, otherwise Finn might kill him on the enemy phase. Okay, didn't get any crits there. So the way the critical hits work in Thracia is that, like most of the Kaga-era games, critical hits in Thracia double your might before subtracting the enemy's defense. So, I'll show this, I can show this better if I actually go into the combat again with Finn. So Finn, normally when capturing here, has 17 attack versus 21 defense. But if you got a critical, he would actually have 34 might, I believe. And so that would be subtracted from the enemy's defense, and he would do 13 damage. So critical hits are actually very useful in Thracia when fighting enemies with high defense or who are on terrain. I'm gonna try for a crit capture here, but I probably won't get it. I have to crit twice to actually capture him here. And I straight up missed twice, okay. Well, at least Finn levels up. Not bad. Extra strength is always good. And if I could rescue Dagdar out of the way, I would attempt to capture with him, but I'm not going to do that. Okay, we have you down to 11. A Finn crit would actually do it, but I kind of want to go... Okay, Brave Axe won't do it without a crit either. I believe, though, I would actually get a cost there, so I have a pretty good shot at getting a critical on at least one attack, and that is all I need. All I need to only get one hit with this hammer. Which I think is more reliable. Come on, Yzma, be with me, let me smash it with a hammer! No. And yeah, I have to rescue. I think I'll go for the Brave Axe this time. I should get 4 attacks here, and I need to crit one of them. And I got it! Nice! I love the warrior crit animation, just jumping right up and slamming down. And so yeah, we just captured ourselves a boss, and with that, we can take him, get his long sword, and release. Damn, bested by a bunch of backwards yokels. Well, I won't forget this. And now that's done, we can finally seize and end the chapter. Nana and Marita should be safe, right? We didn't kill the guy. That's all he threatened. If he died, the hostages die. However, Raedric may not be that merciful, so he's taken them all the way to Munster as bargaining chips. And that means it's the start of our journey. We have to give chase to Munster itself. Which will put us into conflict with a major enforcer of the Empire, but, as Leif said, he's not a child. Oh, that's the source of the line that is hilarious when Anna says it in Engage. That's where that comes from. Also, this line right here, Leif said that in Heroes. So, yeah, if you aren't familiar with these games, you might finally be recognizing some of the quotes that these characters have in future Fire Emblem installments. But that is the end of Chapter 1. I'll see you all next time for a more typical Fire Emblem foe and an atypical archer.